Good day, everyone. I am Rosanna Angelica Padillo, and together with me is Miss Rhea Salcedo, and we will talk about the learner centered materials. Before we start, let's first go on to our learning objectives. First is students will understand what student centered learning is. Second is describe the learning centered materials. And third, present few examples of learning centered materials. Now, the question that we'll first answer is what is a learner centered approach? Learner centered approach views learners as active agents. They bring their own knowledge, past experiences, education, and ideas, and this impacts how they take on board new information and learn. It says here that to learn a skill, students must be directly involved. No teacher can stand there and tell the students how to do something and expect the students to leave the classroom able to do it. Right? We are more focused. We are traditionally into teacher consistently guiding us to learn. However, when we talk about the learner centered approach, it is more on the students will learn by themselves. And this differs significantly from a traditional instructor centered approach. Traditional learning approach were informed by behaviorism, which sees learners as blank slates. Instructors are experts who must impart all the relevant information. This approach sees learners as respondent to external stimuli. According to Martha Kennedy, a university lecturer, a classroom dynamic is which the students participate actively while teachers must take a seemingly more passive role. It boils down to group work, one-on-one tutoring in the classroom between student and teacher. And this students present and take on more responsibility. So we now will continue to define the student-centered learning. Students succeed when what they're learning matters to them. In student centered learning, students' interest drives education. Student centered learning gives students the opportunity to decide two things: what material what material they learn and how they learn it. That's the two things. First is what material they learn and how they should learn it. This concept is also sometimes referred to as personalized learning. In contrast to teacher-centered approach, SCL or student-centered learning engages students as leaders and decision makers in their own learning. What you see here is the School of Tomorrow or the ACE or ACE, Accelerated Christian Education. In the picture, what you see is they have their own divisions or what we call cubicles, where the students have their personal space and learn by their own. And as you see in this part, you will see a student standing, and this is where they check their own books. They check their own test and see if they learned something, and then try to improve. If they made a mistake, they can learn, and the that's how the School of Tomorrow works. The second example that we will see is the Montessori School. As you can see in the picture, there are students who are in a big space, in a big room where they can freely do what they want and learn what they want. And I think that these are the examples of the learner centered materials or learner centered approach. If you don't know about the School of Tomorrow, it is a local proponent of unique individualized system of education. This type of education enables children to learn at their own pace, and that's what the books that they are learning is what we call pace. And another example is this one, the Montessori School. is an environment with plenty of materials for hands-on learning, and children are encouraged to focus on and often stick with activities that pique their interest so they could definitely enjoy while they learn. This stands in contrast to traditional school, where students in the same grade generally move through a structure and scheduled curriculum, as what we usually learn or what we traditionally learn. And here we will move on to the examples of learner centered materials. Here are some of the examples of learner-centered design or materials. And this is the part one. The part two will be reported by Miss Salcedo, and she will be assigned for the conclusion of this lesson. The first one is the user-friendly interface that learner can navigate with ease. So the examples here are what we are familiar, usually what we usually use. Those are our classroom, Google Classroom, and even the things that we use, the other application that we use like the Google, the Gmail. Those are the user-friendly interface that learners can navigate with ease, and that's what we are doing as we are in still in online class setup. Second one is the online educational sites where students can navigate for learning. One of the example I want to share is the word wall. If you're not familiar with word wall is a site where you could edit, make your own educational quizzes, lessons for your students. Another example that was given is the Udo learning, and I believe there are more as long as we search on the Google. Another example is here in the YouTube, which we are all very familiar. As we browse on YouTube, we will find many resources where we could use as we teach. And this one is called the Little Fox. Little Fox. This is a children's site where the students or the kids learns more about ESL lessons. And this is highly recommended for those who are teaching or tutoring English in different forms. The third one is to use a video that is explanatory and interesting. And as what I have said earlier, YouTube is very useful as we want to search or um, as we research or as we look for different sites or different materials that we could use in teaching for the learner-centered materials. The fourth one is the learning tips and suggestions that can relate to the learner personally. So these are the few examples, so four examples that I have shared to you. And as I said, Miss Rhea Salcedo will continue with this discussion. But before we end up, I will leave you with our usual activity, which is the quiz. And this is the quiz that you guys will answer. The first one is this approach. You have to identify this one. This approach views learners as active agents. What is this? Second, give two examples of student learner-centered institution in the Philippines, which I have discussed. And the third one is cite two examples of learner-centered materials according to the report. I think that's it for my report. Thank you so much for listening. And once again, our topic is the learner-centered materials. I am Rosana Angelica Padillo, and thank you so much for listening.